2022. Does anybody have any corrections to the minutes on the left? Dr. Carmichael? Good. All right, no corrections to the minutes. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Minutes are approved. Moving to item 5B, discussions, reports, updates, Utility Department Monthly Activity Report. Mr. Steinmetz, please.
Good evening, Water Commissioners. In February, we pumped out of the Edwards Aquifer 44.75 acre feet, which brings our withdrawal total to 55.43 acre feet for the year, leaving us with 587.17 acre feet available. Currently, the Edwards Aquifer 10-day average for the J17 well is 658.7. Once the J17 well number falls below 660, the Aquifer Authority declares Stage 1 restrictions, which will reduce our permitted acre feet for the year. As of today, the Edwards has been in Stage 1 for 7 days. All required sampling was completed and all samples passed, the raw samples, the daily chlorine residual samples, and the distribution samples. The water loss has gone up from 8.1 to 11.6, which we conducted an extra hydrant flushing due to a complaint of sand in someone's plumbing fixture. So we flushed a little extra in one subdivision to see if that remedied the problem. They were the only ones that actually complained about it. So more times out of none, it's the water softener has some issue. The police department also caught a construction company out of Bracken illegally hooking up to one of our hydrants to our system. They paid a fine and the cost of the water that they claim they had taken. They claimed they withdrew about 8,000 gallons, so they had a fine of $150 and they paid $82.50 for the water they claimed that they withdrew. We also had a controlled overflow of our ground storage tank at the Schoenthal plant. It was done to remove excess calcium that was floating at the top of the tank. We were called to, last week, we were called to check out a leak on Garden Ridge Drive. You can probably show the pictures at this point of some of the pictures we took in. We were called out to check out a leak on Garden Ridge Drive, not far from the intersection of Garden Ridge Drive and Grass Creek. After digging up the area, it was discovered that the water was coming from an old water main that was buried in place back in 2016 when we redid the CIP project. After surveying the Garden Ridge Drive area for any signs of a leak, we discovered a service leak at the intersection of Timber Rose at Garden Ridge Drive, about 1,900 feet away. The water used the least path of resistance to travel until it surfaced. The surface leak had been going on for some time undetected. Once the repair was made, the water stopped flowing where it had surfaced downstream about 1,900 feet away. The hole in the copper pipe was about ½ inch, which kind of estimates at 100 PSI about 52.24 gallons per minute. The automatic draft customers for February was 681. AMI customer portal profiles was 600. Billing customers 376. Total AMI notifications 655. Abnormal usage was 210. Continuous flow alerts 33. Leak info codes 339. And usage trends was 73. And that's all I have to report for the month of February.
Questions on the right? Go ahead, sir.
On the pumping from the Edwards, last year it said that we pumped most of the Trinity first part of the year and the Edwards toward the end. Why did we go so much high for the Edwards last month?
Last month, because we were trying to get more pumped out, so we don't end up with extra at the end of the year.
Okay. Is that part of the grand scheme from last year? Is so we don't get caught short again?
Yes.
Okay.
But we kind of have to adjust our pumping whenever we start going into stages, because we do get a reduction of how much we can use toward the end, so we kind of have to offset what we're pumping.
Okay.
I had a question that has nothing to do with the water, but the hazmat response last Tuesday, you know what that was for?
I had no idea we had a hazmat response.
Yeah, I should have taken the streets around the corner from my house. Yeah, apparently when they were picking up somebody's trash, it was quite a liquid spill on the road, and I noticed a collection truck compactor truck was sitting there waiting, and they were on the phone, and the next day the hazmat people were out there cleaning up.
Was it through Republic Services?
Yeah, Republic.
What was
It was a residence, something they picked up at a residence and it spilled.
I'm sorry, can I interject?
Sure.
One of the hydraulic lines for a Republic Service truck broke, so it spilled onto the street. But Republic Services did clean it up, and they did send out a third-party contractor to clean the street because it was stained. So that third-party contractor removed the stainage from the street.
Thank you.
And Mr. Steinmetz, I know there's some discussion about the unaccountable unsold at the city council meeting, and I'm not so worried about the percentage and everything, but our total amounts are sort of been trending up for the last few months. I think it's great that y'all found that one leak and repaired it. Do you have any other concerns or anything else that we're checking around or looking for any of these increases?
Not at that point. That was like the most unusual one I found my 20 years of having a leak show up almost 2,000 feet away from the original. But yeah, that's probably going to account for a lot of it because it takes a while for a whole inch, half-inch wide to get that big. So it's probably going to affect the next outcome of the water loss. So I can actually account for it, so it should bring it down some.
Well, let's hope so. That's great. And I don't know how you found that 2,000 feet away from where it was surfacing, but good on you.
Well, basically, it was following the old water main that was buried. So whenever it found a spot uphill, it went there. It was the easiest direction it could take, and it just kind of went on from there until whatever. It must have filled up that water main to some point to where it had to come to the surface. And that
So you
whole-
just dug up 2,000 feet of line to find it?
No, we just went upstream, started checking every, our listening device, checking meters and the mains and fire hydrants, seeing if we heard any hissing. And then as soon as we got to the up almost Timber Rose, we heard a water meter open the lid, and you can just hear a gushing sound, which would indicate a high-pressure leak.
Okay. Interesting. Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you, sir. All right, to number, what is that, 5B2? At the items applicable that were discussed at the city council meeting. I'm not sure how many of you got to watch the video, but at 8 minutes in, there's a text dot report on 2252 and just sort of the schedule on how they're going to be, how the project is going to flow on 2252. There were, and then during the water, the Water Commission portion there, Vice Chair, there was a question I didn't hear initially from one of the council members. I think it was about on lost water, but I didn't quite hear it on the tape. Do you remember what that was about?
Well, for lost water, it was pretty much just the discussion that Mr. Steinmetz just went over about what the possible sources were and the trends. So it was really nothing new than what we just talked about.
That's what I was hoping. Thanks. There's also, Councilmember Valdez did mention about how we're doing a good job on the Edwards usage, and he's happy how we were tracking it there. And he did comment on the increase in portal users that's going on, so great job with our outreach there. The city engineer did mention that the 2252 planning is going as expected, and he estimated the end of April for completion of the redesign of the water mains at 2252 and 3009. The pension mark recommendation, there's no questions on that from council, and that was approved per our recommendation. Ms. Kane, anything else you'd like to add? Okay. Vice Chair, anything?
Just the comment from Councilmember Valdez, thanking you and your son for your contributions to the spreadsheet for tracking leaks.
Thanks. Okay, so we'll move on to item number 5C, recommendations. The first recommendation is to discuss, make possible recommendations on the amount of transferable water rights for the proposed Overman development. That information is in your packet. Ms. Kane, is there anything you'd like to add about this request? Okay. Got it, nothing additional.
Nothing
All the
additional.
information's in your packet and the memo's in your packet. So as we go through here, are there any questions on the left? Any questions on the right?
I just, the way the worksheet was filled out compared to the last couple is using a slightly different mechanism. I didn't know if either staff or the applicant would want to kind of walk through, get the living use equivalents, and the number there to me is different than it is computing based upon meter sizes. So I was just trying to resolve the difference.
So it was actually based on it was the straight math off of the meter size and the LEU ratio, I believe. Because I think there was, am I missing something here?
It's probably me missing something, but I see 30 on the sheet, and then it's listed as 33.8 down in the calculation. So there's a meter somewhere I'm not seeing, or difference in the calculation. Right, 6 1.5-inch meters with 5 LU each meter would be 30. So I guess my question is, where'd 33.8 come from?
They use the LUEs on the water impact fees is what it appears. But there are 5 LUEs per 1.5-inch meter, and they're projecting to have 6 1.5-inch meters, so that would actually be 30.
Okay, everybody just have some patience. I'm going to do the math for 30 real quick. So Kevin, are you saying that you think this is more like, this should be 30 instead of the 33 that's from the petitioner?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not really up to us, but in the previous 2 that we looked at, that's the way it had been done.
That's the way it should
So I
be.
just was wondering where the difference came from, but it's
From the
possible it should be 30.
petitioner, when they put their paperwork in, they said 33.8. But if we use our math in our spreadsheet, that comes out to 30, like you correctly pointed out. I did the math for that. I have an answer if someone else would do the math also. That's exactly what I got. I see Ms. Kane punching away at her calculator also.
18.9?
Yep, 18.99
Yeah.
is what we both got. Okay, so if you look at the worksheet on, after the drawing, you'll see on that worksheet, there we go. We actually projecting 6 1.5 meters, 1.5 inch meters, which is a LUE ratio of 5. That would give you 30 LUE. And then if you run that times, for the math, times 565 gallons per day, times 365 days per year, and then divide that by gallons in an acre feet, that ends up at 1899. We have a few people that have got the same answer on that math.
My only other question, so I guess it's for the staff, I don't, is there any reason why the petitioner would want to have used the larger number that you're aware of?
No, I would think he would want to use a lesser number. Correct,
Yeah, I think
Mr.
that's
Overman?
fair.
You would prefer using the lesser number of acre feet than, rather than the higher number? Okay.
I think that was a safe assumption, but thank you for confirming. All right, so we have the 1899 after the correction there in accordance with the spreadsheet that we've done before for the consistency. Is there any other discussion, or are we ready for a motion here? Yes, sir.
I get to choose mics. Do we need to send an explanation forward with that? Of why it varies from what the applicant has submitted?
I will cover that when I bring the recommendation to City Council.
Thank you.
So is there a motion for a recommendation?
Yeah, well, I'll take a stab at it. I recommend we approve the proposal from Overman Development for 18.99 acre feet for the development. Do we have to name the development?
Just Overman.
Okay, for Overman Development.
And that's a recommendation that City Council approve 18.99 acre feet for transferable water rights for the Overman development.
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, just wondering, this one is worded as, this is a speculative approval of what it might be prior to actually having a planning and zoning, approval. I don't know if we need to include wording in there that it's subject to approval, or if that's obvious based upon the ordinance.
Ms. King, can you help us out on that one?
It is correct that the master plan that Mr. Overman has submitted has not been taken to Planning and Zoning or City Council, so it has not gone through the approval process. My recommendation is based on the master plan that he submitted for the consideration of transferable water rights, was based on that master plan. However, if he submits a master plan that differs from this and goes through the approval process, that the water rates be recalculated based on the master plan that is approved. by the city in the future.
Is there an easy way to catch that, to follow up on that, to make sure we don't miss it if if anything changes?
Yes,
Okay,
we will have to follow it. It will all be placed into his file. And staff is just going to have to follow it.
okay.
I mean, because it could be possible that a future master plan that is approved, in all fairness, could be less than what this amount is based on this master plan, or if this master plan is brought forward, the same one, something could change on it, and it could be a lesser amount.
Okay, do we need to add that to the recommendation? Do we need to add that officially to the motion for the recommendation to council? Or are we good with the motion as stands?
I think that I would add to the motion that it's based on the master plan that is dated March 22, 2015, that these water rights are based on that. Should there be a future master plan that is brought forward that differs from this, that the water rights, transferable water rights be recalculated on that plan submitted.
So I think since you have a motion kind of on the floor, it either needs to be withdrawn or voted down, but then modified.
So did we get a second on that motion already?
We did.
Okay, so you're good. You can go ahead and take a vote on it. The minutes will just reflect that during the discussion of the motion, and it'll clarify everything that Nancy just said. So you can go ahead and move forward.
Perfect.
Thank you.
That's a lot easier than trying to re-say all of that. All right. Is there any further discussion? Any questions for the petitioner who's here? No? Okay. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? And the motion passes to send the recommendation to City Council. All right, recommendations. Number 3, discuss and make possible recommendations on the AMI incentives. I thought Commissioner Reynolds was working on that. Was there someone that was working with her on that? Go ahead, ma'am.
Are we going to discuss item C2, transferable water rights?
Sure. Read right over that. Okay. Yes, item 2, for transferable water rights. There we go. We're going to discuss make possible recommendations to amend ordinance number 7. We did get some information on that today, actually, that came in and sort of is driving us to actually do some more research. So we actually were not going to discuss that today until we get some more, some clarification from city staff on what happened earlier today. Is that fair, ma'am? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that was 2I for 2 Roman numeral or II. Discuss and make possible recommendations on discounting or offsetting water rates for future developers who transfer water rights to the city of Garden Ridge. For this one, we've discussed this a few times. Was there anything on the left on this?
I'd need to give it some more attention.
All right?
If you're going to hold for more information, I'm content to wait.
Well, this was a separate issue, right? The first one was specifically about ordinance number 7 and the requirement. This was somewhat, I guess it's separate but related there. We can hold it also, I suppose. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, well, not knowing what the issue is, I'm not sure I want to make further comments.
Go ahead, ma'am.
I think they actually kind of are linked together. So I think once more information, or until this is studied, and we find out a little bit more information, then I think we don't even need to talk about the second aspect of it.
We'll table the second one also then. All right, now we're to number 3. Discuss May's possible recommendations on the AMI incentives. We didn't have anything on the left. Anything on the right? There on AMI incentives?
I don't have anything to add on that right now.
Okay. Nothing to add on that item now. We're going to go to discuss May's possible recommendations on the leak adjustment process. We had some recommendations on changes to the leak adjustment process that went out to everybody a couple of weeks ago. Can we call the, thank you. So what we have here, I believe all the red there is changes that we are that we're recommending. All the text that is in black is existing in Ordinance 54. I get that correct? Yes, okay. I'll double check it as y'all go ahead and look through this quickly to remind yourself, if not, and then we're going to keep scrolling down here in a moment.
I have a question on 2, because in the prior discussion, it speaks to the limits of the department manager for making an adjustment, but here it says request be forwarded to the Water Commission for review and action, and it implies that we could take an action. It doesn't limit what action we can take.
Keep scrolling.
Okay. Did I miss it?
There you go. No, it's on number 3. Scroll to the end so we get all of number 7 on there. 7 and 8, I guess. All right, are there any discussions on the update to Ordinance 54 on the leak adjustment process?
I think it shows a lot of work on the point of staff. The only thing, which is a personal thing with me, is under 7.4, violation of city ordinance. So is it clear that that includes if you don't have backflow preventers installed for your swimming pool, or I think landscape irrigation is pretty well, but for people who have the faucets have been installed 100 yards from the house because you don't want to carry a hose 100 yards from the house, but there is no backflow on that pipe that's been run out there, something of that nature. But are there any examples of what's a violation of city ordinance, or a reference there that could be put in for people to look at to review the city ordinance?
I do not have a good answer to that other than referencing the planning and zoning ordinance, which the number is, I can't pull it out of my brain right now, but that is the air gap. The air gap is required on different systems that are detailed inside the planning and zoning ordinance. Other than that, I can't think of anything else to put in there.
So 2 points on that. First, whether or not a person installed a backflow preventer in accordance with the ordinance is not the same thing as saying the leak resulted from that violation. So one can imagine a situation where they did put in a backflow preventer and the backflow preventer was the area that leaked. So I'm not exactly sure where we want to go with that. I mean, to me, violation of a city ordinance is a separate thing, and they can, be fined for that purpose, but I understand the point. I just don't know whether you have it or not doesn't mean the leak resulted from it. So if that's the intent, then that wording might need to be tweaked a little bit there as well.
I just think it's a violation of the city ordinance. I hear what you're saying, but when people, residents, I should say, look at an ordinance, and probably for the first time if they had a leak, they probably don't go through all the city ordinances, and they come to this section on violation of a city ordinance, it raises the question to me of how much research do I then have to do to look at every single city ordinance to see if I violated one, and if the violation had nothing to do with water. Does, again, maybe not backflow preventer, maybe I had a dog off leash, so I don't get my leak adjustment because my dog was running free one day and I got tagged. So I would, a little clarification is all.
Yeah, that's not the intent of this. This is, okay. Well, it's if the leak resulted from a violation of the city ordinance. So if you were breaking an ordinance and that's what caused the leak, then you would not, you're not eligible for a leak adjustment on your bill. So,
I agree, but I'm not sure that the wording of that.
how would you reword it?
Clarified.
We're not leaving tonight until we figure it out, so go for it.
It's going to be a long meeting then.
It's going to take as long as it takes because we've been talking about this for months. That's why I emailed it out 2 weeks ago. We're going to get it done.
If the intent is simply a leak that the ordinance caused, I think it's fine. If we wanted to add the flow preventer, that's a separate issue.
No, I'm not saying, but I think if the leak resulted from violation of city ordinance, I think what Jim just said, it's related to, or the actions that caused the leak were in violation of a city ordinance, then I would agree with that. But just to say in violation of city ordinance, it doesn't automatically tie it back to the leak.
I don't remember seeing this. I don't remember seeing this.
You could add in violation of ordinance 54 or ordinance, and the planning and zoning ordinance, the specific ones that are of issue. But I would want to be really careful that we're saying what you did, like I have an illegal plumbing connection and that caused the leak, not, anything else.
I would agree with that.
Okay, so could we say leak resulted from customer's violation of City Ordinance 54?
I would stick with the ordinance 54.
Okay. That sort of narrows things down a little bit too. There's specific items in Ordinance 54 there.
The only thing I can actually think of is say that they have their backflow leaks, and then we discover that they're in violation, or their backflow's in violation because they haven't had it tested in 6 months or a year. That's the first thing that comes to my mind.
And that would be fine because that would be directly relevant to the situation we're discussing. So you can probably just say this ordinance because this is ordinance 54.
And very few other ordinances are going to have anything to do with your water connection. I think Stephen had.
Some of our ordinance points to the plumbing code, so if something's like a plumbing code violation that's not repaired, that could probably be looked at the same way.
So is there a different reference needed than other than Ordinance number 54?
I believe there's certain things in Ordinance 54 that points to the plumbing code, isn't that correct?
Off the top of my head, I honestly cannot remember. I'm sure there probably is some reference to it.
Like if a expansion tank wasn't installed when it was required and something happens to the water heater, which caused a leak, so that could actually be looked at as a plumbing code violation that went bad.
Yeah, but the ordinance refers to the plumbing code, so I think you're covered there, personally. I don't know.
I'm wondering if there may be a better way to word that sentence.
Just add including plumbing codes as incorporated, right? Violation of this ordinance to include the plumbing codes incorporated by reference.
And any plumbing codes adopted by the city of Garden Ridge, something along those lines. And we can have our legal counsel review that as well and make sure that they don't have a problem or would recommend some additional wording for that.
I like it better.
And
Go ahead.
so do we have, can you pull up the definition section? Is that possible? Because we've added some things here, we want to make sure they're included in there.
What are you specifically looking for?
Well, we've added, in one place you talk about water loss instead of leak, and we've added the phrase qualified water loss. It's attempted to be mentioned, but those things should be in definitions if they're
That's
going to be.
definitely not in there.
You might look up leak as well.
Qualified water loss in accordance with, because the qualifications are further down in the paper there.
Yeah, but I don't think when you use the word like qualified, you're putting a modifier. So I've had a water loss, some of those qualify and those don't. I don't know that we'll have a situation where we could list every possible circumstance of what qualifies and what doesn't. So that's going to come back to the board or the commission applying some judgment. So having a definition then gives you something to.
Can you bring the
tie
Word
into.
document up again, please? Can you scroll up to item, I think it's 4. No, it's 3. It's 3. Is that what you're worried about, the qualifying water loss?
Well, yeah, it's in there a couple of places, but that's the big issue. It's like, are we going to define what qualifying is, or is qualifying what the commission is determining in their recommendation?
You know you wrote that, right?
That's why. I'm just saying that something should be in the definitions. That's all I'm saying. Well, and the attorneys may have a different view that may not be necessary, but.
Can we scroll up and see a little more of the qualifying, where it appears, yeah, from a qualified water loss?
Does anybody have a printed copy of this? There's no printed copy.
You could start by just referencing that paragraph 7 if you'd rather do that. I mean,
I could help them a lot.
there's
if
some
I
more
had
things we could
printed
talk about that, because, I mean, I get the intent. I'm just trying to figure out what, customers are gonna say when they're trying to make their case.
Can I see on a full screen what this document is?
Well, the point, I think, if I remember when we had this discussion before about qualified water loss, is that these things are not automatic. There's some thresholds that people have to meet in order to be eligible to receive a water rate or water adjustment. So I'm okay with either adding a definition for a qualified water loss, or the first time it's mentioned, you can say in accordance with paragraphs 7 and 8, which I think are the ones that actually reference that. Actually, 6, 7, and 8, or 6 and 7, I mean. Or are my notes different than what's up here? No, 6 and 7.
What about I'm wondering if 6 could be, oh no, I was trying to incorporate it qualified and non-qualified into number 6 or 7.
You mean try to work those words into there?
Yeah, but I don't know. I'm sorry, I have not, the first I saw of this is right now, so I have not had a chance to look at it.
So under 6, you say leak adjustment will only be considered a qualified water loss if? Okay.
No, don't put with qualified water loss there. Leak adjustments will only be, leak adjustments
Will only be considered qualified water loss.
will only be considered qualifying if.
Qualified,
If you can do that, you'd say a water
Qualifying.
loss will only qualify for a leak adjustment if.
I was trying to incorporate it into that, so someone looks at it and they can see that this is what qualifies as, or this is what would be a qualified water loss or leak adjustment. I'm sorry, I don't remember what the,
Qualified water loss.
if we can
would you say
incorporate it maybe into 6 and, that into 6 and 7, then you may not have to have a, you wouldn't need that definition of a qualifying water loss. That's what I was trying to pull them together.
yeah, so leak adjustments should only be considered a qualified water loss if.
See, I understand what we're doing, but what, like Chair Mueller mentioned, I think I brought it up originally, and what we were trying to address was the original ordinance said you could have a leak adjustment if there was a leak, and it defined leak very narrowly, and yet we had approved many adjustments for situations that were not leaks, but were loss of water. So we were trying to get some words that would allow, it doesn't have to be a broken plumbing pipe somewhere to be
Thank
a water loss, but we don't want to leave it up that, any water loss is there. So I think it's kind of, that's always been the slippery slope that we get on. The leak adjustment is completely separate from whether or not the water loss is qualified, right? You make an adjustment after you've determined that there was a water loss or a leak. So it may be best to just leave the word out. I mean, I don't know. I want to have some flexibility for the commission, for people who come in with stories that don't fit the, typical scenario, but I also don't want to open up the can of worms. I said, I'm not sure. That's why I thought the definition might work, but I agree with Ms. Kane's comment too. It could be incorporated there. I just don't want to limit the concept. The idea was to expand the concept to include types of water loss that is not a broken piece of plumbing that customers may have. And the whole justification was we changed this process and we changed the billing structure so that the leak was not being subsidized in the first place, right? So the idea was you don't limit how many times people can apply for a leak adjustment because it's not automatic like it used to be. It has to be established there's a certain amount of water and you're still paying for the cost of the water. So that's the philosophical thing we keep getting into is how narrow do you want to make it so that people don't apply? Or, I've heard it both ways, right? So I think the customers should be able to come in and make a case. And then the question for the commission is, based on the facts and evidence presented, is it the sort of water loss that would qualify? So if we can find some words, that's great. If we can't, maybe we need to avoid the whole thing. But if nothing else, that 6 and 7 maybe should be earlier in the flow of the document. I mean, because right now 6 and 7 is just talking about the leak adjustment. The issue of if the water loss is qualifying is something that maybe needs to be addressed earlier up. Anyway, I don't want to hold you back because I got a lot of other things.
Go ahead, Ms. Kane.
Can you go back to the very first of this, Kat? Okay, see, the first sentence talks about leak adjustment upon the request, and then you get to the first section that's underlined in red. I think if we do a little adjustment of some verbiage there, that may help us a little bit. Unexpected high water usage resulting from a water loss due to a water leak or criminal activity. So right there, to me, you're defining what a water loss is.
I'm okay either way. I mean, we can have them or not have them. The issue we're trying to address was when we say due to a leak would mean that something's broken, and sometimes it's not broken. It was, I misprogrammed my system and it
Right.
spewed out a bunch of water. And we have in the past allowed people to claim those things. So I think really it's, do we allow for water loss that is not a leak? That's the first decision. If the answer is no, then we should just take it out. But if we're going to continue to allow those things, then we have to define it in some way.
Yeah, I agree, the use of the word leak, because if your swimming pool overfills and overflows because of an electronic malfunction in a system, which is not a leak, technically, then do we allow for that?
What if we rename this form water loss? Adjustment request form? Take the word leak out. But a leak is a qualifying water loss.
Yeah, I'm okay with that idea. I don't know how everyone else feels.
Nope, I think it clarifies a lot more.
There's another place up 5 lines from that. Water leak, there you go.
We need to do something about the sentence that says due to a leak or criminal activity. I don't know what you do with that. Unless you add it down below as a acceptable loss of criminal activity. So you could take that out and then put criminal activity in paragraph 6, is it? I think. Under 6, could we add the criminal activity and then get rid of that paragraph, that sentence up above? Which one? The one with the criminal activity.
No, you don't want to put that in 6, because that's
Okay.
only be considered qualified if.
That's true. Add a 5A.
But in 8, you have leak again that needs to be replaced. On item 8, word number 6, leak. Change that to water loss, right? The amount of the water loss cannot be determined. The water loss adjustment will be based upon.
I'm sorry, are we changing every leak to now be water loss? I thought we were only changing the name of the adjustment to water loss.
Yes, I think we're changing every leak to water loss.
Okay. Then I will do that separately so that I do not waste more time
Okay.
making administrative changes.
So back up in that first paragraph, we just get rid of that due to and put it back like it was, or say such as, or including, so it's not limiting. So high water usage resulting from a water loss, such as a leak or criminal activity, but just so it's not limiting.
Kevin, you said you had a lot more. Keep going.
Okay, well, still in that first paragraph has, or was, a quantified water loss will be charged at the second tier rate above, and I think if I'm reading it right, it was changed to 10,000 gallons. But the new water rates fully charged from water from the first gallon, so I don't know that second, this is for you guys to discuss. I'm not saying it's true, but we may not need that anymore. It might just be whatever your leak is charged at that appropriate rate instead of going to a second tier. So I'm
I don't
offering
follow
for
why
what you
that
think.
wouldn't be required anymore because the cost of water is close to second-tier rates, right?
Well, it was second tier rates, but now the average cost is $5.67 per 1,000 gallons. So even at the first 5,000 gallons, they're paying that amount if you go based on average cost. But if we want to keep it there, I mean, we can. It's just I don't know how much. Well, let me go ahead and say this because I've heard this several times from various folks and staff. We have these discussions. A lot of times it's presented as these leak adjustments are a loss of revenue, but they are not, because if there hadn't been the leak, it wouldn't have gone through the meter in the first place. So we have to stop thinking that way. What the city has lost when the water goes through the meter is just the cost of pumping it out of the ground and treating it, which it's not insignificant, but I think we're overstating revenue loss because that water would not have been demanded if it were not for the leak. So that's just something to consider.
So what's your recommendation?
And bring up the issue for discussion. If, based on what we've got in front of us right now, I'd say we don't need to have the second tier. We just base the adjustment on the water loss, whatever it is. Or you just put the first tier rate. But I guess my point is, if the city and if the commission wants to keep it the second tier, that's okay. Just be aware of what that 10,000 tier rate is, because it's now, 2167 more than it was, or something like that. I don't have that number in front of me, but maybe Councilmember Valdez has that in his hip pocket. But
If you just deleted the above 10,000 gallons, does that fix things a little bit?
Well, yes, but it begs the question. I guess the question is, do we need the second tier? Or is it just charged at, like if you have a 20,000 leak, does it get charged at the second tier? Or is it charged by tiers? Like the first 10,000 is one charge and the second 10,000 is another? It's for discussion. I don't I don't know. I want it to be as simple as possible for the city staff. And if you guys think that that's fair to leave it at 10,000, then I'm okay with that. I'm just trying to point out the reason for it in the first place was because the first tier included free water. It doesn't anymore.
That's true.
But I thought that was the rate, so if you lost 50,000 gallons, you weren't billed at the upper tier rate, you were billed at a lower tier rate. And you want to say we're going to build regardless, so,
That is correct, which also meant that people had a leak that was less than, basically 25,000 gallons didn't get an adjustment because it was already, that 25,000 was already charged underneath that second tier rate. I'm trying to avoid that situation, right? Someone who only uses 7,000 gallons normally and they have a 20,000 gallon leak should still be able to get a leak adjustment. I might not be thinking this straight. I'm just trying to pull this stuff out here, so. I'll see if I have that in my notes. Do you have the current rate structure? Can you just pull up what the tiers are?
So I'm a little lost. So if I use 5,000 gallons a month and I have a leak of 20,000 gallons, then I would get an adjustment at the tier 1 rate for the water that leaked or was lost instead of paying tier 2 rate?
If you make the leak adjustment at tier 1, then they get a credit back that is calculated at that cost of water. So it reduces the bill by that much. It reduces it by $282.
So, but if I'm a big user and I'm using 40,000 gallons a month and I leak up to another 10,000, then I would get, what would I get? Adjusted at the 40,000 gallon, which is tier 1, 2, 3, tier 4 rate instead of tier 5? For that was leaked or lost?
What they figure out the bill, and then they figure out the water loss, how much gallons of water loss was. They would charge that water loss at whatever tier rate we pick, so 282 or 475. And then the reduction in the bill would, it would only reduce it to the point that it equals the bill prior to the water loss plus the amount that the cost of that water. I'm not sure I said that very well, but instead of paying the full bill, the amount that was water loss, like 20,000 gallons, that 20,000 would be charged at the 282 or 475 per 1,000 gallons. So they would still pay that amount. The question is, do we want it to be the second tier or the first tier? So if you're a low tier user, you've already paid the base fee, which, is that right above that? So you paid $30 already, and then you're paying $2.82 for every 1,000 gallons. So if you use 5,000 gallons, that's, you know, another $30 almost. So you pay almost $60. So if you had a 5,000 gallon leak and we charged that, so in other words, instead of using 10, you used, you know, 15, then you would reduce by 282 off that amount. But it's not much when you're down at those low levels. So there's a point at which they, if we say it's charged at the second tier and they didn't use that much water, then there's no possibility of a leak adjustment. Which, it's small, it's not a large amount, so I don't want to waste a whole lot of time. It was originally second tier because of the way the rate structure was built. That
Well,
may not
originally
be
it was
necessary.
first tier. We
Right.
changed it about a year ago because the first tier was not paying for the cost of the water pumping it out of the ground. That's why we changed it to tier 2. So changing it back to tier 1, we're sort of accepting some risk for the city, right?
Yes, that would be true, a little bit.
Go ahead, Kat.
I think to keep it simple at this point in time, I say we just leave it at the second tier rate. And then if any cases do come forward where it was 10,000 gallons or less, then we can make adjustments as needed, because that simple change is just an administrative change, and it's something the commission can talk about.
And I'm fine with that.
Anything else on the left? All right.
You want the next one?
Are you out of the first paragraph yet?
I'm out of the first paragraph, yeah.
Nice, all right. Keep going.
And the paragraph 4 you already addressed when we had the conversation about definitions, so I'm on the back page. In number 5, paragraph 6, these are kind of minor, so I don't know what the commission thinks, but we have 6, bullet 2 there, the water was shut off as soon as detected. Again, I don't know if this is the right words, but I was looking at more like as soon as possible after detected, because there's some leaks that may be difficult depending on where the leak is, or may pose other hardships, like if it's in your supply line, right?
I think that makes sense to everybody. Look around. As soon as possible after detected.
And that also gives a little bit of room for the commission to hear evidence on that. And
I agree with, but what if you simply don't turn the water off because for your convenience, you want to leave the water main running all day or for a couple of days until the plumber shows up? I mean, we've had people come before the commission that turn the water off and on when they need, but they don't let it run constantly simply because it's going to take a week for the plumber to respond. So I don't know if possible to one person is, sorry.
yeah, I admit that. I just don't want to be in a situation where it says it will only be considered if, and then there may be other circumstances where it isn't possible. I mean, you can imagine someone who's got some home health care situation or whatever where they need to keep the water on for a little while.
Would you say reasonably possible or something, a double adjective in front of that? Or just leave it like that and let them argue? I'm good with reasonable.
I mean, not being a lawyer, I think reasonably possible is okay. I mean, either way, we're going to end up having as a commission to weigh those circumstances. Either as an exception, like if it says we won't do it, or if it says possible, as soon as possible, then we have to make that determination. But I just want to have the room for someone who has a legitimate health concern that comes in and says, I waited till the next day or you know, a couple hours, that's not going to be interpreted as prohibiting an adjustment. That's my only concern. So I guess, staff, what do you guys think?
I'm sorry, I was busy reading and I did not hear your full question. I apologize.
I believe that the water was shut off if reasonably possible after detection is sound. You guys can make a good judgment based off whatever the requester states. And after we forward this to our legal department, if they have any issues with it, we can let you know.
I'm fine with that. And the similar thing then on item 4 is all information for thorough investigation is submitted to the water department, in a timely manner. We used to have that. Do we want to leave that there? Or I think at one place we defined timely manner, gave them up to 180 days.
So you have to, the time for submitting the paperwork, for submitting the request is still in there. The point for this is that we don't want Stephen to have to wait for the next 12 months as data keeps getting trickled to him.
I think you could put a time limit on it. You have 90 days for submission.
Notify in 30, submit within 90, and
Yes.
none will be considered after 180 days is what it says. So we've already defined timely. That's why I was wondering if we should just put in a timely manner in the sentence, as opposed to just saying no, because to me, the way it read is no leak adjustment will be made if the information was not submitted, and it doesn't indicate anything about timeliness.
Sure, that looks good.
Pending lawyer review. So then, under 7, this is the same basic idea in sub-I. Reasonable indications of a leak existed or customer was notified of a leak and customer did not shut off the water, maybe did not take action to shut off the water in a timely manner, so it matches the idea above. And
Did not repair leak in a timely manner.
Did not shut off the water in a timely manner. That's the point, is if somebody's got a leak and not doing
Right,
anything
right.
about it. Yeah.
But
Right. You
there are
can't
some
necessarily
that
repair
have,
it in a timely manner.
there are some that it's taken them a good while to even get the leaks repaired.
So you want to go back up to 6 and say leak is repaired in a timely manner?
No,
And
the
then
point,
also
we've always
in-
done this, right? You do not get an adjustment until your leak is repaired, period.
Okay.
I would just like to point out for the change that we made, it says that this includes AMI system notifications.
I'm getting to that.
Yeah, it does say at the end of it. But the way that our system is set up, a customer will only be notified of a leak every 30 days. So there is limitations that are already set. So I don't know if that changes your opinion on adding language.
No, I would still think it needs to have something in there about timely, because the AMI, I may not have gotten an AMI notification because of the 30 days, but if I did get one, then I need to pay attention to it. But going back up to 6, since you mentioned that thing about the repair, it says a leak is repaired. Water loss might not be repairable, so you should say like the water loss is repaired or corrected, because there might not require repair, right? Like your swimming pool overfilled.
Or somebody left a hose on.
Yeah, or the one guy at the deer,
Yeah.
or corrected. Okay, and then under 7, sub-bullet 2, leak is due to an appliance failure. To me, that's, again, somewhat vague unless we're defining appliances, because there's all kinds of things that could be called an appliance. So, water softener, pool stuff, what,
Refrigerator,
are there some appliances that are okay and some that aren't? I'm just not sure how that'll be interpreted. Yes, I probably wrote it, but, you know, I'm entitled to change my mind, right?
got, is a toilet an appliance?
Or it's a plumbing fixture. It may not hurt to, if we want to keep the word appliance failure, or those words, we may want to put such as, but not limited to, and name a few.
Are we trying to define appliance? Because I think that's pretty all-inclusive.
I can see people not feeling like a toilet would be an appliance, or a pool would not be an appliance. I can,
Or thinking that their water softener should be entitled to a leak adjustment. So my feeling is it should be struck altogether, but I don't want to, I'm not sure why. I'm not sure what the rationale is, but in the same topic is going to come up with lawn irrigation systems. So it comes all the way back to the philosophy. Way back when, you could only get a leak adjustment every 12 months. It was capped at a certain dollar amount, and there were no questions asked. And the council had great problems with that because we spent a lot of time trying to figure out when was the last time someone had a leak adjustment, and the feeling was people were gaming the system, which they're always going to do. So when we went through the rate structure to make it fully funded, and we supposedly come up with what the cost of water is, if they're already paying the cost of water, why do we care what the cost of the leak is? I mean, what we want is a process that encourages people to fix it, to find it and fix it in a timely manner. So does it matter if it's a lawn irrigation system? I mean, if it does, then of course we should say that explicitly, but that is most of our leaks. It's also most of our water demand in this city. So that's a philosophical question. I'm not going to tell you the answer, but especially if we keep second-tier rates, then I think there's no reason to worry about if it's lawn appliance, or if it's an appliance or irrigation. It's still a water loss. That's, some council members will probably disagree. In fact, I'm sure they will. But that's kind of where I'm thinking right now.
So I think I actually put those in, and that was based off looking at city ordinances in the local area and what other cities had put inside their ordinances, and that's where I got those, because very few cities allow leak adjustments due to appliances or irrigation. I'm comfortable with it in there or out of there. I was just trying to provide some left and right limits, I suppose.
Yeah, I understand, and I'm okay with it also. My only comment is, of the cities that don't allow it are also much more restrictive in their prices. Or their rate structures are lower, but they have more stage limits and things like that when they discourage irrigation in other ways. So, I mean, I can go either way. I'm just, the way we have our rate structure set right now, we're recovering those costs. So it may not be worth the argument. If we do leave it, that I would agree with Ms. Kane that we should say such as, and point to things like refrigerators and, indoor, more traditional appliance terms, and stay away from the water softener argument. But
I think perhaps in the interest of simplicity and executability, that it may just be better to eliminate these two items for now. I don't know. What do y'all think? Keep? Don't keep?
I'm not in favor of water irrigation systems, but they leak quite a bit. We have a lot of issues with my timer didn't work, or I didn't know that section 4 was turning on constantly, and
You do get a AMI notification for that. IOPS checked it, so.
I agree, and I'm fine with it. We could take it out based on the way the current rate structure is. We could leave it in, which there's certainly good conservation justification for that. Or we could have a separate leak adjustment rate for irrigation. right? You can make it, there's lots of things that you could do, but with the way, and you're right, the most of the adjustments we get are for people with irrigation problems. But that's also why our rate structure is set up the way it is, and why, I don't know.
I'd say take it out. If the customer's gonna come in there, they're gonna try to put it, they're gonna ask anyhow, either way, whether you have it in or out. They're gonna try to get some adjustment out of it. But if the rates, the second tier rates are what it is, it really won't matter.
All right, let's go ahead and take it out then. Anything else for your filibuster, sir?
You asked for it. So somehow I skipped it earlier because I read the wrong X. On 6.3, you have that AMI system. Will only be considered if they're signed up for the AMI system. I won't support it with that in there. I mean, my philosophy is quite simple. You can have an incentive for AMI, but if we're going to have a leak adjustment process, it should be available to all customers. That part of their due process should not depend on having a third-party portal or system. The city has the capability to find major leaks using the AMI system and notify folks. I don't think we should deny them an adjustment based upon whether or not they have the AMI portal.
Yeah, but the caveat is in there that may be waived for the first adjustment request. I mean, it's like, fool me once, okay, fool me twice. It's like you keep making the same mistake and coming in for a leak adjustment because you refuse or for some reason don't sign up for the AMI system.
When we own it, when it's our data and we're responsible for security, I might support it. But right now, it's a third-party vendor, third-party system. So you're basically telling customers that I don't care what your privacy concerns are or anything like that. You either have the AMI or you don't. And I think the leak adjustment process or water loss process is a due process issue. We either offer it to all customers or we don't. I'd rather deal with AMI with incentives, positive reasons to do it, not prohibitions on things. That's my philosophy, but that's it. I would like to see that gone. I don't mind saying that AMI system notifications are considered on whether or not you took timely action. I don't have any problem with that, but I don't want to deny somebody a leak adjustment because they didn't sign up for the portal.
I'd support that too.
All right, we can go ahead and take that one out for now.
Last bit. On 8.
Go ahead, Ms. Kane.
In paragraph 4, the last sentence in red, or the second to the last sentence in red. When the Water Commission recommends a leak adjustment greater than 500, y'all can only recommend to the city administrator up to 500. Are you saying that when the Water Commission recommends a leak adjustment greater than 500 be forwarded to City Council?
This was based on timeliness of action, and this is similar to if it's $255 and the person goes, hey, I'll take an adjustment from the utilities manager for $250 rather than holding out for the $255. Same act for $500. If it's $505 and they want to accept action from the city administrator for $500, that would be okay. That's what those lines are trying to say.
Okay. I think we need to have the city attorney look at those last few sentences and make sure that those that she's good with those,
Okay.
okay?
And
Sorry.
when she does, no, I think that's a good point. It could just say, when an adjustment is greater than $500, the city administrator may offer an adjustment of $500 in lieu of council review and action.
Yeah, something along those
Yeah,
lines.
Just say it, so it's an offer. It's entirely up to the customer.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. We're not recommending to you to do it. It's just an option you can recommend.
Well, and I don't want it to, y'all are a recommending body, and this almost sounded like it was going a little tweak beyond it. But I like what you just said, Commissioner Harshbarger.
So may offer in lieu of city council. Yeah, because we would recommend to city council, and then you can offer them in lieu of council. On
Can't
the,
change the approve to offer. Oh, okay, sorry. I'm done.
at the very last paragraph says if the amount of leak cannot be determined, maybe say any leak adjustment may be based on the average, so it's not a limit unless the intent is to make it a limit. And I'm saying that
And
because.
you specifically wanted that verbiage in there.
And I still do, but I
Okay.
just want, so it says the same month for 3 years, and then it says, or the highest in the last 12. If necessary, in the past, we've also done like the average of 3 months, probably like the summer months, the 3 months. So I don't know, so I guess really the question is, do we want to keep that flexibility or we want to get rid of it? Because as written now, that's the only option. That makes our life a lot easier because there's only one option. But there's a lot of variation between years in that month. So, I mean, that's just a question, I guess.
Well, the intent was because we've gone round and around on this a few times when we couldn't determine. So how many times have we had where the amount of the leak cannot be determined? A fair amount, right? But then as we go through there, we need some kind of reference point. So we were trying to standardize this so it wasn't a giant question mark every time this came up and felt like we were making it up every time. So these are some of the items these are some of the ways we've done this before. These are the 2 ways that we've done this before. It makes it simpler and executable. And once again, I mean, if we don't have that information, then obviously we do what we've always done. We sit around and we use our best judgment, and we are still recommending something to council more than likely on this. Or we're actually recommending the action to someone else anyway, right? Using our best judgment.
Yes, but if it's a will, then that recommendation is a variance as opposed to just a recommendation because it's not allowed in the ordinance. So that's why I was going to say may. It gives the desired
Should.
way to do it, or even should. That'd be
Should.
fine.
There we go. Instead of will on number 8, and near the end of the first line, put should.
I have exhausted my filibuster. I yield the floor.
Okay, on the left. Nothing further?
I have nothing further.
Don, you're good? Okay.
Not right now. I want to look at it after.
Sorry, I'm going back to exactly what this action item was. Just bear with me here for a second. So this was discuss and make possible recommendations on the leak adjustment process. So we've made multiple changes here. We have this. We do understand that we need legal review, and there's a few other administrative changes that'll be made for this. And now the question is, do we want to make a motion to go ahead and move forward with this, or what's the proper, Nancy, if you could help us out here, what might be the proper process to get this to council in a timely manner?
Allow Kat an opportunity to make the adjustments. We will send it to our city attorney for review and bring it back to you after her review in case there are some additional changes that she may recommend, or some information she thinks needs to be put in there that we haven't thought of, or has not been discussed, and then let y'all make your recommendation at that point forward to city council.
Okay, so we'll give it to the staff for a month and then come back at the April commission meeting
We will try our
with a
best to
final
have-
answer.
We will try our best to have an answer and have a document back for you at the April meeting.
Okay. I'm going to have to hold y'all hostage again in April. I see how this is going. I will do it.
Just in case we run into some current concerns or it takes a little bit longer for review.
Okay.
That's,
I will
I'm
call
gonna
you every
caveat
week
it with
and
that.
see how we're doing. All right, so is everybody comfortable where we are in this? Handing over to city staff, readdressing next month? Good? Okay. Awesome. We are now to Water Commission Activities and Projects, item number 5. I think we have gone through many of these items we've gone through today. I think I can, well, go through them quickly. I don't think there's anything for operations planning to update. For ordinance, Vice Chair Harshberger and I, we are going to, in the next month, before the April meeting, we're going to go ahead and take some of that information about Ordinance 7 and review that with the city staff. And we will come back to the commission in April with some proposed language on Ordinance 7 or what we've learned about Ordinance 7 and some of the things that are going on. And that's sort of related to, that's the Ordinance 7 is the one related to transferable water rights, just for everybody's reminder. And of course, I will call the city staff every week on the leak adjustment process, Ordinance 54 changes for April. Excellent. Dr. Carmichael, anything for the Education Subcommittee?
No, not this time.
Okay. Vice Chair Harshberger, anything for water rates?
Just that we're going to be meeting with staff on the 17th. We weren't able to get it scheduled any earlier, so we should have an update for the next meeting.
17 April?
No, this week, on Thursday.
Oh, yeah, it's not the 17th yet.
Yeah, so.
Excellent, thank you. And strategic planning, we do not have anything from the strategic planning subcommittee this week. Commercial water rates, any movement on that between yourself and Commissioner Reynolds? That's you, Dr. Carmichael.
I know.
Okay.
No.
Okay. That closes out the item number 5, Water Commission activities and projects. No, it doesn't, because we have item, no, we got the, yes. Yes, we are in D, future agenda items. Looking for any input on future agenda items, starting on my left. Dr. Carmichael, anything? On the right?
So in light of all the current events, I'd just like to put maybe once a quarter, so like every third meeting, have a closed meeting agenda item for discussing security and critical infrastructure issues. We've done that like once a year, but maybe we should do it a little bit more frequently, and I'd rather not do it in open session.
Are you requesting to have an executive session at the April meeting to discuss security concerns for our water infrastructure?
I don't know that it needs to be April, maybe May. We need to kind of think it through a little bit. I
Okay.
just, at some point, want to get it on the agenda as a regular basis.
Okay. So
Why are
want-
you concerned about April?
I'm concerned about every month, but I'm not sure that we're ready for that, especially if we're going to be hostage to ordinance 54.
No, we'll just have to make sure that we can have legal representation potentially for that. So preferably not April, but maybe we can try to work on May.
Okay. Can we look at that for May then? We're going to wait. Any additional concerns? Are we good? No, not at this point. Okay. All right, if there's no more future agenda items, the next meeting of the Water Commission will be April 19th at 6 p.m. right here in City Hall. That brings us to item number 6, citizen comment period. Are there any citizens wishing to speak? Okay. That concludes all of the items on the agenda. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Meeting is adjourned at 7:40 p.m.